Thank you for joining me today in this AWS tutorial as we talk about AWS Secrets Manager. Adopting the best practices in this video will help you minimize the risk of a security disaster. All real-world production systems have sensitive pieces of information such as API keys, passwords, and database credentials. And all of these are referred to as secrets. We don't want to hard code these secrets into our code or property files, as this practice significantly increases the possibility of a security incident. As an IT security best practice, it is highly recommended that you use a secrets manager to store these types of secrets. In this tutorial, we're going to start with a quick overview of AWS Secrets Manager. Next, we'll show an example of creating a basic secret in AWS Secrets Manager. Next, before we run and test this Lambda function, we'll need to discuss a configuration change in the IAM role associated with the AWS Lambda function that is needed for everything to work properly. Finally, we're going to talk about some best practices and wrap up the discussion. Okay, so here we go. AWS Secrets Manager is an AWS service designed specifically to manage your secrets, such as API keys, passwords, database credentials, etc. AWS Secrets Manager is one of the many AWS services available to developers, enabling them to implement strong cloud security. This service has a lot of powerful capabilities, such as integration with AWS database services, such as Aurora, enabling automatic password rotations. But to keep things simple in this example, we're just going to create a basic secret. So now log into your AWS console. Now I'm going to navigate to the AWS Secrets Manager homepage. Once here, you can create your first secret by clicking Store New Secret in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Now, you should see the secrets summary view. Click the Store a New Secret button in the upper right-hand corner. If this is the first time you're creating a secret, your summary view will be empty. Click the Other Type of Secret radio button. Once you do this, the HTML form will change, prompting you with the appropriate information. Enter your key value pair, where the key is a reference to your secret and the value is the actual secret. Once you've saved your secret, navigate to the AWS Lambda homepage. Let's create a Lambda function. Click the Create a Function button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. I provided a name for my new Lambda function and selected Python 3.8 as a language runtime as a personal preference. I used all the other defaults and clicked Create Function. After we create the Lambda function, you will see a default Python-based Lambda handler. I went ahead and added in my Python function implementation. I have 3 Python functions used in this Lambda function. The Lambda handler function is the entry point for the Lambda function. This is what the AWS Lambda service calls when executing the Lambda function. The Lambda handler function calls the internal function getSecretAPI This function uses the AWS Boto3 library to call AWS Secrets Manager. This function returns the secret back to the Lambda handler function. The Lambda handler function then calls mask value to mask out most of the value, revealing only a small part of this. The Lambda handler then prints out the partially masked value to the runtime console. Now, before I run and test the Lambda function, I know that I have one small configuration change I need to make. The AWS IAM role that the Lambda function is using needs a permission to get to AWS Secrets Manager. In this screen, you will see the default IAM role automatically created by AWS Lambda when I created the Lambda function. If I click that role, it will take me to the roles configuration under the AWS IAM service in AWS console. Now I see the role configuration homepage. This role, by default, has the AWS Lambda basic execution role policy attached to it. This policy allows the Lambda function to to write logs to the AWS CloudWatch. These logs are great for debugging and troubleshooting, but we need another policy for reading secrets from AWS Secrets Manager attached to this role. So click Add Permissions dropdown and select Attach Policies. Now you see a list of predefined policies. In the search bar, type in secret to see if we can filter on any predefined policies regarding AWS Secrets Manager. Sure enough, we see a policy giving us read-write permissions to AWS Secrets Manager. In this example, the AWS Lambda function only needs to read secrets from Secrets Manager, but this predefined policy gives us both read and write permissions. It will work for this example. Ideally, we'd want to attach a policy that only gives the Lambda function read permissions, and even better, just read permissions to the specific secret. You can do this by creating a custom policy, but for this example, we will use the predefined policy and keep going. Now you can see I've added the policy to the Lambda function role. Now we are ready to run and test our Lambda function. But when you click test for the first time, it prompts us to configure an initial test case. Go ahead and give it a name and save. Now we can execute the Lambda function. So let's do it and see what happens. We see that running the Lambda function produces what we are expecting. The Lambda function retrieved the secret from AWS Secrets Manager, partially masked it out, and then put it out to the runtime console. Great, this is exactly what we wanted. It worked. Now, you can download this AWS Lambda code from GitHub. You can get the GitHub URL to the repo in the YouTube description notes. So now let's cover some best practices. Don't share your secrets. They're called secrets for a reason. If you do, people might use them in a way that's inappropriate. So protect your secrets. Use a secrets manager for storing sensitive data. This is the best way to protect your secrets. Don't check in your secrets into a code repo like GitHub. If you do, anyone with access to that repo can see that sensitive data. Lastly, give your IAM roles minimal permission. So compute entities like Lambda functions, for example, have a role, and those roles have policies. Give them the minimal amount of policies they need to do what they need to do. This is known as principle of least privilege, and it's a very good best practice to follow. Thank you for joining me in this 5-minute AWS tutorial focused on AWS Secrets Manager. I invite you to explore my channel and watch other videos that look interesting to you. Feel free to leave me any ideas in the comment section on potential videos you would like to see in the future. Your input is important to me. If you find value in how I'm packaging up these cloud technology tutorials, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would definitely appreciate that as well. One last thing. We all love technology, and we're excited about innovation in the cloud and machine learning AI, but don't forget to carve out some time in the real world. Go outside, go swimming, go hiking, get out and move your body, and if you do, let me know in the comments. And with that, have a great day.